Manhattan, New York, summer 1927. The temperature reaches 94 degrees. No air conditioning exists in most buildings. Ice is not a luxury. It is survival. A truck pulls up to a tenement on Mulberry Street. Two men step out. They wear flat caps and suspenders. One man carries metal tongs. The other holds a clipboard. They move to the back of the truck and pull out a block of ice, 50 pounds, wrapped in burlap. The block costs 40 cents. Last week it cost 35. The tenant, a woman with 3 children, pays. She does not argue. No one argues anymore. The truck belongs to the Knickerbocker Ice Company. The company is owned by the Tammany Hall political machine. But Tammany does not run the ice business. Not really. The real owner is a man named Charles Lucky Luciano. Luciano is 29 years old. He controls bootlegging operations across Lower Manhattan. He works with Meyer Lansky and Benjamin Bugsy Siegel. Together, they supply illegal alcohol to hundreds of speakeasies. But in 1927, Luciano sees a different opportunity. Ice, every household needs it. Every restaurant, every hospital, every butcher shop. The city consumes over 5 million pounds of ice per day during summer months. Luciano begins buying ice companies. He does not use his name. He uses intermediaries. By August 1927, he controls 11 companies in Manhattan and Brooklyn. But the ice business is crowded. Over 40 companies operate in New York City. Most are small, family-owned. They have regular customers and fixed routes. Luciano needs them gone. A fire breaks out at the Gotham ice plant on East 138th Street. The building is wood-framed. The flames spread quickly. Fire trucks arrive within 8 minutes. By then, the structure is unsalvable. No one is inside. The fire starts at 2:00 a.m. Investigators find traces of kerosene near the rear entrance. The owner, Samuel Rothstein, tells police he has no enemies. He has owned the plant for 14 years. 2 weeks later, another fire. This time in Queens. The Aurora Ice Company burns to the ground. Again, kerosene. Again, no suspects. The owners do not go to the police. They go to Luciano. Luciano offers to buy their customer lists. He pays fair prices. Most agree. Those who refuse receive visits. Joseph Boccia owns the Red Hook Ice and Coal Company. He is 53 years old. He has 7 children. His company serves the Italian neighborhood around Columbia Street. 3 men enter his office. They do not threaten him. They make an offer. Luciano will pay $15,000 for the company. Boccia refuses. The men leave. 4 days later, Boccia's delivery trucks are sabotaged. Sugar is poured into the gas tanks. All 6 trucks are disabled. Repairs cost $800. Boccia still refuses to sell. On October 20th, 2 men wait outside his home. When Boccia steps onto the sidewalk, they beat him with wooden clubs. His jaw is broken, 3 ribs fractured. He spends 9 days in the hospital. He sells the company on October 30th. The price is now $10,000. By December 1927, Luciano controls 23 ice companies. He merges them under a single name, the Cooperative Ice Company of New York. But consolidation is only the first step. Luciano meets with his partners. Meyer Lansky handles the finances. Frank Costello manages political connections. Joe Adonis oversees enforcement. They discuss pricing. Before Luciano, ice companies compete. Prices vary by neighborhood. Competition keeps costs low. A 50-pound block sells for 30 to 35 cents in most areas. Luciano proposes a new system. All companies will charge the same price, 50 cents per block. No exceptions, no discounts. This is a 40% increase. Lansky calculates the profit. The city uses approximately 150 million pounds of ice each summer. At the new price, gross revenue will exceed $4 million. After costs, the syndicate will clear $1 million in profit. The plan requires coordination. Independent ice companies must be eliminated or absorbed. Prices must be enforced. Any company that undercuts the cartel must be destroyed. Costello reaches out to Tammany Hall. He offers monthly payments. In exchange, city inspectors will harass independent operators. Health violations, safety violations, licensing delays. Tammany agrees. The Fulton Ice Company is one of the last independents. The owner, Abraham Klein, refuses to join the cartel. He keeps his price at 35 cents. On March 8th, a city health inspector arrives. He claims the ice is contaminated. He shuts down operations pending laboratory tests. The tests take 3 weeks. Klein loses most of his customers. When the plant reopens, he has no choice. He sells to Luciano for $6,000. By April 1928, Luciano controls 70% of the ice distribution in Manhattan and Brooklyn. The Bronx and Queens follow by June. Only one obstacle remains. Tammany Hall wants a larger cut. May 15, 1928, Midtown Manhattan. Luciano meets with James "Jimmy" Hines, Tammany district leader. Hines controls patronage jobs and protection rackets in Harlem and the West Side. He has helped Luciano expand, but now he wants 25% of the profits. Luciano offers 10%. Hines refuses. The meeting ends without agreement. 3 days later, Hines sends word. If Luciano does not comply, Tammany will use the police to raid his operations. They will arrest drivers, seize trucks, shut down distribution. Luciano does not respond immediately. He consults with Lansky and Costello. They decide to pay. On May 22nd, Luciano agrees to give Hines 15%. The deal includes monthly cash payments and a guarantee that Tammany will block any new competitors from entering the market. The ice monopoly is complete. Summer begins. Temperatures rise. The city swelters. The price of ice is now 50 cents per block. Complaints flood City Hall. Newspapers run stories. The New York Times publishes an editorial calling the increase an exploitation of the poor. Nothing changes. Tenement families pay. Restaurants pay. Hospitals pay. There is no alternative. The boardwalk is crowded. Families escape the heat. Vendors sell hot dogs and lemonade. Every stand uses ice. Every concession booth. Every soda fountain. The ice comes from Luciano's trucks. A vendor named Morris Stein buys 6 blocks per day. He used to pay $2.10. Now he pays $3. His profit margin shrinks. He raises the price of lemonade from 5 cents to 7. Customers complain. Some stop buying. Stein has no leverage. He cannot buy from another supplier. There are no other suppliers. This pattern repeats across the city. Butcher shops in the garment district. Fish markets in the Bronx. Corner groceries in Harlem. All pay the new price. Some businesses close. Others cut costs elsewhere. They fire workers, reduce hours, lower wages. The monopoly creates a ripple effect. A coalition of small business owners meets at a social hall on Atlantic Avenue. 32 men attend. They represent grocery stores, restaurants, and meat markets. They discuss a boycott. One man suggests they pool resources and buy ice directly from manufacturers in New Jersey. Another proposes filing a complaint with the district attorney. Nothing comes of it. 2 days after the meeting, 3 of the organizers receive visits. Men in dark suits appear at their businesses. No threats are made explicitly. But the message is clear. The coalition dissolves. The heat intensifies. The summer of 1928 becomes one of the hottest on record. Temperatures exceed 95 degrees for 12 consecutive days. Hospitals struggle. Ice is used to treat fevers, to preserve blood, to cool operating rooms. Bellevue Hospital uses 300 blocks per day. The cost has increased by 40%. The hospital administrator, Dr. William Schroeder, writes to Mayor Jimmy Walker. He requests an investigation into ice pricing. The mayor does not respond. Walker is a Tammany man. He receives payoffs from dozens of rackets. The ice monopoly is one of them. Dr. Schroeder contacts the press. The New York World runs a front-page story on August 15th. The headline reads, "Ice Trust bleeds hospitals dry." The story gains traction. Other papers follow. The Daily News, the Herald Tribune. Public pressure builds. Mayor Walker calls a press conference. He announces the formation of a special committee to investigate ice prices. The committee will be led by a city alderman named George Donnelly. Donnelly is a Tammany loyalist. The investigation is a performance. Donnelly holds 3 public hearings. Ice company executives testify. They blame rising costs, fuel, labor, transportation. No mention is made of the monopoly. The committee issues a report on September 10th. It concludes that price increases are justified. It recommends no action. The New York World publishes a scathing editorial. The paper accuses Walker of a cover-up. But there is no follow-up, no reform. The monopoly continues. Not everyone accepts the new order. A man named Salvatore Maranzano controls a rival faction within the Italian underworld. He operates in East Harlem and the Bronx. He runs gambling dens, loan sharking operations, and labor rackets. Maranzano sees Luciano's ice monopoly as an encroachment. He decides to challenge it. In early September, Maranzano establishes his own ice company. He calls it the Empire Ice Corporation. He buys 2 manufacturing plants in the Bronx and begins undercutting Luciano's prices. Empire Ice charges 40 cents per block, 10 cents below the cartel rate. The move is calculated. Maranzano knows he cannot compete long-term, but he can force Luciano to negotiate. To share territory, to pay tribute, Luciano responds immediately. An Empire Ice truck is making deliveries on Arthur Avenue. 2 men approach. They carry pistols. They order the driver out. They pour gasoline into the truck bed and set it on fire. The driver is not harmed. But the message is delivered. The next day, another truck is burned. Then another. Maranzano retaliates. On September 18th, a cooperative ice truck is ambushed in East Harlem. The driver and his assistant are dragged from the cab and beaten. One man suffers a skull fracture. The conflict escalates quickly. Luciano meets with his advisors. Lansky urges caution. A war will attract attention. Police scrutiny. Federal interest, but Joe Adonis argues for a harder response. If Luciano appears weak, others will challenge him. The monopoly will fracture. Luciano makes a decision. He orders a sit-down with Maranzano. The meeting takes place in a restaurant on East 187th Street. The location is neutral ground. Both sides bring armed men. They wait outside. Luciano and Maranzano sit across from each other. Also present, Meyer Lansky, Frank Costello, and 2 of Maranzano's lieutenants. Luciano speaks first. He proposes a deal. Maranzano can keep his ice company. But he must charge the same price, 50 cents. And he must pay a percentage to the cartel Maranzano counters. He wants exclusive rights to the Bronx, no interference from Luciano's men. Luciano refuses. The negotiation stalls. Maranzano makes a threat. If Luciano does not agree, he will go to the press. He will expose the monopoly. Name names. Implicate Tammany Hall. Luciano does not react visibly. But inside he is calculating. The meeting ends without resolution. At 11:30 p.m., Maranzano is walking to his car. He is alone. His driver waits at the curb. 2 men step from the shadows. They fire 6 shots. 4 miss. 2 strike Maranzano in the shoulder and chest. He survives. The shooting is not fatal, but it is a warning. Maranzano understands. He withdraws from the ice business. Empire Ice Corporation shuts down within a week. Luciano's monopoly is unchallenged. By the end of the month, the ice cartel controls 92% of distribution in New York City. Prices remain at 50 cents per block. Complaints continue, but there is no organized resistance. Luciano has achieved something unprecedented. He has turned a basic necessity into a criminal enterprise, and he has done it with minimal violence. The model will be replicated. Milk, bread, produce. Other cartels will follow, but the ice monopoly is the first. As temperatures drop, demand for ice decreases. The cartel shifts focus. Luciano begins planning for the next summer. He orders the purchase of additional manufacturing plants. He expands distribution routes into New Jersey and Westchester County. The operation is now a permanent fixture. The cold months bring a pause. Ice consumption drops. The city uses 1/5 of its summer volume. Most of the demand comes from commercial clients. Butcher shops, fish markets, a few restaurants. Luciano's organization shifts resources. Drivers are reassigned to bootlegging operations. Warehouses are used to store illegal liquor. The ice business becomes secondary, but the infrastructure remains. The trucks, the distribution network, the political protection. Luciano knows the monopoly will resume in the spring. January 15, 1929, Manhattan. A new challenge emerges. The federal government begins investigating organized crime in New York. The focus is on bootlegging, prohibition violations, but federal agents are also gathering information on other rackets. The U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, Charles Tuttle, assigns a young prosecutor named Thomas Dewey to lead the investigation. Dewey is 26 years old. He is ambitious. He is methodical. He begins by examining financial records, bank accounts, cash transactions, property deeds. He discovers irregularities. Several ICE companies are owned by shell corporations. The same names appear repeatedly. Frontmen, intermediaries. Dewey suspects a monopoly, but he has no proof. Dewey interviews business owners, grocers, restaurant operators, hospital administrators. Most are reluctant to talk. They fear retaliation. One man agrees to speak on the condition of anonymity. He is a grocery store owner in Brooklyn. He tells Dewey that ICE prices doubled in 1928. He says there is no competition, no alternative suppliers. Dewey asks who controls the cartel. The man does not know, or claims he does not. Dewey keeps digging. As spring approaches, Luciano prepares for another profitable summer. He meets with his lieutenants. They review pricing, distribution schedules, payoffs. Frank Costello reports that Tammany Hall is satisfied. The monthly payments continue. No interference is expected. Meyer Lansky projects revenue. Based on the previous year, the cartel will clear $1.2 million between May and September. Everything is in place. But Luciano is cautious. He knows the federal investigation is ongoing. He orders his men to avoid unnecessary attention. No violence. No public disputes. The ICE business must appear legitimate. Thomas Dewey subpoenas financial records from 12 ICE companies. The subpoenas are part of a broader investigation into racketeering. The companies comply. They turn over ledgers, invoices, and tax filings. Dewey assigns 2 accountants to review the documents. They work for 6 weeks. They find a pattern. All 12 companies purchase ICE from the same manufacturers. They all charge the same price. Their distribution territories do not overlap. It is classic cartel behavior, but there is still no direct evidence linking the E companies to Luciano or any criminal organization. Dewey needs a witness. The weather warms. Demand for ICE rises. The cartel resumes full operations. Prices remain at 50 cents per block. Customers complain. Some write letters to newspapers. Others contact their aldermen. Nothing changes. The New York Times publishes another editorial. It calls for a grand jury investigation. The editorial notes that ICE prices in Newark, New Jersey are 30% lower than in New York. Mayor Walker ignores the editorial. Dewey makes a breakthrough. One of the ICE company owners, a man named Louis Kushner, agrees to cooperate. Kushner owns the Atlantic Ice Company in Brooklyn. He joined the cartel under duress. His plant was firebombed in 1927. He sold his company to avoid further violence. Kushner tells Dewey everything. He names names. He describes the structure of the cartel. He explains how prices are fixed, how competitors are eliminated. He identifies Lucky Luciano as the ultimate authority. Dewey now has enough for an indictment. June 3, 1929, Federal Court. Manhattan, a grand jury convenes. Dewey presents evidence. Financial records, testimony from Kushner, statements from other business owners. The jury deliberates for 2 days. On June 5th, they issue indictments. 14 men are charged with conspiracy to restrain trade. Violation of the Sherman Antitrust Act. Lucky Luciano is named as the lead defendant. Federal agents arrive at Luciano's apartment at 6 a.m. They knock. Luciano answers. He is dressed, calm. He is arrested without incident. Also arrested. Meyer Lansky, Frank Costello, Joe Adonis, and 10 others. All are taken to the Federal Building in Lower Manhattan. They are booked, fingerprinted, photographed. Bail is set at $50,000 each, all post-bail within hours. The story dominates the newspapers. The New York Times runs a front-page article, Luciano indicted in ICE trust scheme. The Daily News publishes photos of the defendants. Public reaction is mixed. Some applaud the arrests, others are skeptical. Organized crime figures are rarely convicted. They have lawyers. They have political connections. The trial is set for September. Despite the indictments, the ICE monopoly continues. The cartel operates as before. Prices do not change. Distribution is uninterrupted. Luciano remains free on bail. He continues to oversee operations. He meets with his lawyers. They strategize. The defense will argue that the ICE companies are independent, that pricing is determined by market forces, that there is no conspiracy. The lawyers are confident. Thomas Dewey prepares for trial. He interviews additional witnesses. He subpoenas more records. He builds a detailed timeline of the cartel's formation, but he faces obstacles. Several witnesses recant. Louis Kushner, the star witness, receives threats. His family is harassed. He begins to waver. Dewey offers protection. Kushner refuses. On August 18th, he changes his testimony. He claims he was mistaken, that he misunderstood the business arrangements. Without Kushner, the case weakens. September 9th, 1929, Federal Court, Manhattan. The trial begins. The courtroom is packed. Reporters fill the gallery. Luciano and his co-defendants sit at the defense table. They wear expensive suits. They appear relaxed. Dewey delivers the opening statement. He outlines the conspiracy. He describes how the cartel eliminated competition, how prices were fixed, how violence was used. But his evidence is circumstantial. Financial records, patterns of behavior, no smoking gun. The defense attorney, a man named George Morton Levy, argues that the ice companies are legitimate businesses, that they compete fairly, that price increases are due to rising costs. The trial lasts 3 weeks. September 30th, 1929, Federal Court, Manhattan. The jury deliberates for 4 days. On October 4th, they return a verdict, not guilty. All 14 defendants are acquitted. The courtroom erupts. Luciano's supporters cheer. Dewey sits motionless. The judge dismisses the jury. The defendants walk free. The acquittal is a victory for Luciano, but it is not total. The trial brought unwanted attention. Federal agents now monitor his activities. Tammany Hall becomes cautious. The political protection weakens. Luciano decides to reduce his involvement in the ice business. He keeps ownership, but he delegates day-to-day operations to subordinates. The monopoly persists, but it is less aggressive. Prices remain high, but not as high. By 1930, the cartel begins to fracture. New competitors enter the market. Some are backed by rival gangs. Others are legitimate businessmen who sense an opportunity. Luciano does not fight them. The ice business is no longer worth the risk. The ice monopoly is in decline. Prices begin to fall. Competition returns. Independent companies reopen. Some are new. Others are old operations that survived the cartel years. A 50-pound block of ice drops to 45 cents, then 40. By June, some neighborhoods see prices as low as 35 cents. Consumers notice. Complaints decrease. The newspapers move on to other stories. Luciano shifts his focus entirely. Bootlegging is more profitable, less complicated. The ice business becomes a minor revenue stream. By the end of 1930, he sells most of his ice companies. The buyers are legitimate businessmen. The sales are handled quietly. No public records. No press coverage. The monopoly dissolves. Thomas Dewey does not forget the ice trial. The acquittal stings. He vows to build better cases, to find witnesses who will not recant, to gather evidence that cannot be disputed. In 1931, he shifts focus to other rackets: prostitution, gambling, labor unions. He will eventually prosecute Luciano again. In 1936, on charges of compulsory prostitution. That trial will succeed. Luciano will be convicted, sentenced to 30 to 50 years, but the ice monopoly is never revisited. It is too complex, too diffuse, too tied to legitimate business. It remains a footnote in the history of organized crime. The Great Depression deepens. Unemployment reaches 25%. Poverty spreads. Ice becomes less of a priority. People have more urgent needs: food, shelter, work. The demand for ice drops. Many businesses close. Those that survive buy smaller quantities. The ice industry contracts. Manufacturers shut down plants. Distributors reduce routes. Drivers are laid off. The criminal element fades. There is no money to be made. The racket is no longer worth the effort. Prohibition ends. The 21st Amendment is ratified. Alcohol is legal again. For Luciano and his associates, this is a seismic shift. Bootlegging was the foundation of their empire. Now it is obsolete. They adapt. They move into other businesses: narcotics, gambling, labor racketeering. The ice monopoly is forgotten. It was a brief chapter, an opportunistic venture, a test of what could be controlled, but it proved a concept. Basic necessities could be monopolized, exploited, weaponized. Other criminals take note. The ice business is now entirely legitimate. Dozens of companies operate. Prices are competitive. The market is stable. No one remembers the monopoly. Or they choose not to. The truck drivers who delivered ice during those years move on. Some find work in other industries. Some stay in the ice business. They do not talk about the cartel. It is not safe. It is not wise. The business owners who were squeezed do not speak either. They survived. That is enough. The customers, the ordinary people who paid inflated prices, have no idea. They never knew there was a monopoly. They thought it was just inflation. Just the market. Lucky Luciano is on trial again, this time for running a prostitution ring. The charges are more solid. The witnesses cooperate. The evidence is direct. He is convicted on June 7, 1936, sentenced to 30 to 50 years in state prison. During the trial, prosecutors mention his other rackets: bootlegging, gambling, narcotics. The ice monopoly is not mentioned. It is irrelevant to the charges. And it is too far in the past. Luciano serves 9 years. In 1946, he is released and deported to Italy. He never returns to the United States. He dies in Naples in 1962. He is 64 years old. The ice industry changes. Refrigeration technology advances. Electric refrigerators become affordable. By the late 1940s, most middle-class households own one. The demand for ice blocks declines. The men with tongs and trucks become rare. The ice plants close. The delivery routes disappear. By 1955, the ice business is almost extinct in New York City. A few companies remain. They serve niche markets, restaurants, bars, outdoor events. But the era of the Iceman is over. Organized crime continues. It evolves. New rackets emerge. New leaders take control. The Genovese family. The Gambino family. The Lucchese family. They control different territories, different industries. But they do not control ice. There is no ice to control. The monopoly of 1927-1930 becomes a legend. Old-timers tell stories. How Luciano made millions from frozen water. How he owned every ice cube in the city. The stories are exaggerated, but they are rooted in truth. Historians begin studying organized crime. They interview former mobsters. They review court records. They piece together the structure of the rackets. The ice monopoly is mentioned in a few books, but it is a minor detail, a curiosity. More attention is paid to bootlegging, to narcotics, to the violence of the mob wars. The ice racket is too mundane, too boring. It does not fit the narrative, but it was real. Present day. The story of the ice monopoly is mostly forgotten. A few academic papers reference it. A few true crime documentaries mention it in passing. But it is not part of the popular understanding of the mob. People remember Al Capone, John Gotti, Meyer Lansky. They do not remember the summer of 1928, when every ice cube in New York belonged to Lucky Luciano, when a basic necessity became a weapon, when survival was a racket. The legacy. The ice monopoly lasted less than 3 years. It generated significant profit. It demonstrated the power of organized crime to control markets, but it also revealed vulnerabilities. Federal scrutiny, public backlash. The difficulty of maintaining monopolies in transparent industries. Luciano learned from it. He became more cautious, more strategic. He focused on rackets that were harder to trace, harder to prosecute. The ice monopoly was a stepping stone, a proof of concept. It showed that anything could be controlled. Anything could be monetized, even something as simple as ice. Final note. By the time the truck stopped rolling, by the time the prices returned to normal, the city had changed. People learned to mistrust, to question, to see invisible hands behind ordinary transactions. The ice melted. The monopoly ended. The men moved on, but the lesson remained. In New York, nothing is free from control, not even cold water. And somewhere in the summer heat of 1928, between the tenements and the trucks, the city lost something. Not just money, not just fairness, but the illusion that basic needs were beyond the reach of criminals. The ice monopoly proved otherwise, and the city would never be quite the same again.